Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Saturday morning Dungeons and Dragons show, or D&D show. My name is Jordan with a silent PH in the middle, and I'm joined always by my wonderful co-host, Sir Lucian, over at Sir Lucian Gaming. And yes, we're live. There's some conspiracy theories going through the chat here on YouTube saying that
it's not live.
Maybe it's been pre-recorded all along.
They figured us out.
They might have figured us out.
That is crazy.
But yes, no, we're back. We're live. A pre-recorded show is better than no show, I feel. So,
yeah,
you know.
We were live because I really do feel like Sir Lucian was chatting in chat.
He was right there.
I'm pretty sure I saw Jordan in chat at some point. So
Jordan was in chat the whole time. He was not chasing a toddler. It was great.
Right.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody. I'm very excited to be here today. I would say not all weeks are like this. But sometimes Thursday, afternoon, I'm like, I should figure out what we're going to talk about. Or Friday, I should say. Friday afternoon, I'm like, we should figure out what we're talking about. And we had a very small list. And then this morning, we just found a bunch of new stuff, and now we have, a full show. And it seems to always work out that way.
Yeah.
It's just really, really funny. So, maybe Jordan and Lucian are AI. Yeah, I don't know. This is unrelated, but have you seen those AI art programs that are now floating around on the internet?
Oh, definitely.
So one of our Discord people in the Discord, he's in the beta of one of them, and he started putting in some very specific art styles and things like that, and made some very cool RPG kind of style art, things That's that I was awesome. I would love to see that on a cover, you know. And
cool.
I think that's bad for artists, obviously, sure. Because artists are that's cool. But I was also thinking about it. If that could be really cool to get artwork for your RPG that you're writing, you know, and bring down the cost of a lot of stuff. But then at the same time, you're putting artists out of work, so I don't think I like that at all. But I was I was looking at it, and I'm like, if it would be that simple for me to be I need this picture in this style with these colors, and then it would just generate it, and I'm like, yeah, that's good, you know, and you slap a logo on it and you call it good. I don't know.
Yeah, and we can't be that far because there's also, I'm pretty sure they're working on AI story writers, so it wouldn't be a big stretch to say there's an AI adventure writer matched with an AI art director generator, then matched with, say, an art AI editor, and you've got a full company of AI. We're just making books for you.
We're just out of jobs all around. And then
so if you have no talent,
they'll find AIs to play the games,
right?
And those AIs will get jobs to get money.
Yeah.
And
the AI dungeon masters are happening too.
Yeah.
I know there's two different projects I've heard of
for
AI dungeon masters, so that could be the wave of the future.
I don't know, it's crazy. And then
we're ahead of the game, dungeon, because here at the show we're AI, so we're already
we are artificial intelligence. Over there, that's his actual name is Albert, and my name is Ingenious, and together we are AI. I don't know. Humans just won't be necessary anymore. It'll be what in the wide world of sports is happening?
Could you imagine watching a live play of AI players, AI Dungeon Master by an AI story generator in an AI generated RPG with AI assets on?
But the one human is the camera guy who goes back and forth between the computer screens. He's like, okay, focus in on AI Sally.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
I wonder if that would be a full kind of evolution, like what happened in the 80s, where computer games got very popular, and D&D heavily influenced computer games in the 90s, 80s, 90s and stuff. Well, I should say role-playing games, you know. Yeah. But the concept of experience and things like that, just how... I remember when Pokemon came out, and then every other game was you got to collect stuff. And we have two versions of the game, and that was the gimmick that they're gamers want this. Gimmick. And I feel like D&D did that as well, but also... stood the test of time. We still like experience. We still like classes. We still like things like that. We like leveling up. A lot of people, I like leveling up.
Love it.
But for me, I was playing so many of those video games that it was actually way more fun to go back to actually playing the board games at the table and get rid of the electronic element and make it more of a human element. And so I wonder if this would be a similar thing. But I do like the idea of, like, I kind of want, like, a dragon story and then have an AI generated adventure for me and then play it. I think that would be kind of fun.
Kind of like and remember the first iteration of this maybe wasn't AI generated, but they had those books for, I mean, I was one of those kids who saw Dungeons and Dragons as a 10-year-old or 11 or 12, whatever it was, but then couldn't ever find it or didn't know that other people would do it again because that nephew's, brother went away. The only thing I could find were those books, were those choose your own adventure books. Yeah. And in my little brain, that was a leap of technology of what I can choose my own adventure, and then I could go to another page, and then the story's different when I do that. That's like the analog version of, like a generated experience like you're talking about. So yeah, we've only just expanded on that, and eventually we'll get into the virtual reality realm of that and what that could bring to our hobby. But I do like what you talked about too. It's a cycle, right? Because we probably go deep for a few years. Like right now we're in the renaissance, I think, of tabletop RPGs, and it will probably wane at some point. I don't know if it's night now. I don't think it is, but 5-10 years, it'll be like, okay, we've done it, we did it, everybody had a chance to do it, and it might go back to more everybody's playing, I don't know, MMOs or something comes back or some new thing comes
and that's
back.
Another
we do
thing,
that for 20 years, and then we come back and we're like, no, I want to get back at the table again, So it's like this big cycle of,
like, MMOs were huge, and now I feel like I don't know anybody that plays one now.
Yeah, hardly. Yeah.
Whereas like if you weren't playing World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy 11, it was like, wait, what? Oh, you're playing Star Wars. Oh, okay.
And something like COVID is probably one of those things that could trigger a little bit of that too, because all of a sudden, if you force people inside, say for a year and a half, well, the things they're going to look for after that are going to be things that are outside or with other people because they just spent a year and a half with themselves or just their family. So so I could see things like that happening too. So yeah, it's interesting to see where it's going and what's what could be next. Because we're still, I think, in that really popular time of tabletop role-playing. I don't think it's heading down at all. It still feels like it's going up and up and up, and more people are seeing it, and more people are getting involved. So
yeah, we
fun.
have some people in chat. They're like, "Well, I play Final Fantasy 14, and I know you played that for a little bit, so I guess
I did. I played
MMOs are still around. I just
I'm sure there's World of Warcraft players, and it wasn't everybody was playing it."
In the news, Radiant Citadel comes out July 19th.
10 days?
10 days, yeah. So Chapter 1 is available on D&D Beyond for free for anybody. You can go pick it up and read it. It's not... it's just kind of like, here's the Citadel. It's just a teaser, let's be honest. It is Chapter 1 from what I can tell, but you're not getting a lot of... There's not an adventure here yet. It's kind of the, let's set up this world and stuff. But it looks pretty cool. We've been talking about it, that I'm very interested in it. And I really like these crystal animals in the art. Like there's like a ruby pangolin of all things, and a obsidian raven that's like, or an eagle that's flying around. So it's cool. Amber scorpion. Like I like this a lot. So I'm gonna.
Yeah, it's a book I've decided I'm picking up. 19th, I'll go down to my store and pick it up for sure.
And I wanted to talk about Tome of Heroes came out. Are you familiar with this by Kobold Press?
I feel like I've heard it, but I've not looked at it lately, so I'd have to be reminded.
They had a Kickstarter, Tome of Heroes, and it's a bunch of feats and class options, like all it's Player's Handbook 3 for all intents and purposes. Intents and purposes? Intensive? I can't read it right.
Intense? They're camping? What?
Yeah, something. It's not in teepees, I'll tell you that. So I received my copy, which was exciting, and I was going over it the other day. There's a couple of them that are not as robust as other ones, where I kind of read that and I'm like, well, I wouldn't want to play that because that's just weaker than this other version that exists. But I think they were making this before... I think the Kickstarter happened before Tasha's? Maybe not. Anyway, there's a couple of things back and forth that are in there. They did include a Warforged style race called Gearforged, which is like, okay, you made a Warforged race.
Nice.
And one of the ones that stuck out at me that I thought was kind of interesting is there's a barbarian that when you rage, you grow spikes, like bone spikes. And then if you like grapple somebody, they take damage. And I was just like, well, I want to play that just because it's hilarious. Like, and it made me think of like that X-Men Evolution mutant spike that can grow spikes. So there's some cool stuff there, some magic items and new backgrounds and feats and stuff. I don't know if I would allow all of it at my table, but it's kind of fun. And if you have that player that is, I mean, we have so many subclasses. I don't think you could get bored from like actual 5th edition or actual Wizards of the Coast subclasses. But if they are, this is a great way to introduce it and be like, well, do you want to try this? Or maybe you go through and say, these 7 really fit my world. I want to use this. And so, but it's out now. You can get it in PDF, and I believe you can get a hardback once they're done. I mean, it's Coldwell Press. They'll have the books out at some point, but
I mean, going back a second, what is the only thing they really haven't covered that you kind of would want to go to a good third party to get? Because they haven't, Wizards hasn't really covered it class-wise. I think the only thing is like a pet class. I mean, still pet classes, they've gotten better and you can get closer to the things you want, but we still don't have like a Pokemon master or a collector pet style class. So I see there's a hole there that a lot of third-party products could fill, and I'm sure do. There's lots like the Beast Heart and all the ones from lots of different places. Maybe the Psionicist, have they really? They've sort of done a little bit with it, but not.
Well, at this point, I feel subclasses are we blanket over other classes. Like we got like a healing monk. Do you remember that? I forget the name of it. But you
Radiant Soul?
Something like that. Yeah, and you can use your bonus actions to do stuff. That's the best sentence I've ever said, ladies and gentlemen. Put that on a shirt. You can use your bonus actions to do stuff. Jordan. I always feel like we're getting like crossover, and one of the Bard subclasses in Tome of Heroes is like Bard of the Elements. And so it's just like a rock, fire, air themed kind of water element, but like you're still a bard, but you can use your bardic inspiration to do these weird like elemental things, and it didn't really like, I don't know, it didn't draw me. I was like, well, I don't really want to play an elemental bard. I'd much rather play an elemental sorcerer or this, and so I don't know, like I feel like are we at that stretching point where it's just like, well, we've got a lot of subclasses now. We're really, that's the bottom of the barrel, is we have now an elemental bard.
I think of that a lot, but then if you start flipping through, like, say, Pathfinder's sets of classes and subclasses, your brain will go, what is going on here? And why don't I have this in Dungeons and Dragons? They have come up with some stuff that blew my mind going through this game. And I'm like, so I always think, just like you do, my first thought for Dungeons & Dragons is they've got it covered. There can't be much more they could, because there's all these subclasses, like you said, that make you feel like a dual class, right? Like the only one I don't have is Kubo in the 3rd string, which is I need a bard monk class that lets me make puppets of paper and go and rock out on a guitar. That'd be awesome. But then I think that first thought, they've got it covered. There can't be much more they would come up with. But then I go see Pathfinder. I go see, a Cypher System. I go see one of these other games. And they remind me there's so much creativity. There's so many things we haven't even thought of yet, that when somebody goes, oh, well, what about this subclass? You go, wow.
Yeah.
I just heard myself somewhere in the back.
Yeah, that was me. My
crazy.
Volume just went weird. Sorry.
That guy's weird. Get him out of your room.
So I don't know. It is, there's a lot of very high Kickstarter products that are happening right now. This is not sponsored, but Roll for Combat bought a bunch of sponsored videos on my main channel, and they have a big selection of monster books coming out that look really cool. But I think that's the industry right now, is like, oh my gosh, like Colville's got a $2 million this, and
monster book,
like and everybody's got this, and so people are just like chomping at the bit to get it on Kickstarter as fast as they possibly can, I feel. To the point where we were talking that I I wasn't going to buy Colville's book because I'm like, I've got all these Kobold Press. Like, I'm literally never going to use it. But then there was this fear of missing out that I'm like, I might as well just get it now. This is dumb. And so I got it. But I need to back off because, especially on 5th edition stuff, because I'm like, I feel like I'm covered for 5th edition. Like, I don't. Right now, the occasional adventure, you know, and official Wizards of the Coast stuff, probably that will always be there because it's official. But like, as far as third-party stuff, I'm like, man, I've got all kinds of DMsGuild stuff that I've gotten print on demand that I'm probably not going to use. You know, I bought a couple things for lore purposes that I've used like a monster out of, but I've never really like utilized the book as a whole. So I don't know.
Come on, Chet. Tell him his answer is not to stop buying stuff. His answer is to start using the stuff you bought. Just like I do with my Steam library. Like, I have a million games in Steam library, and every now and then I have to take a month and force myself to play games I never played, but I just bought and sit in that list.
Yeah,
you have to play it.
I have my good friend Chris. We're Steam friends, and we send each other messages whenever we finish a game, and then we shame each other whenever we buy a new game because it's like, don't do it. You got to finish Horizon Zero Dawn, Jordan. Like, what are you doing? And you're like, I know. I need to start picking games that just have less replayability, and then I'll get through them once and be done, kind of a thing. But
good luck.
Then I just go back and play Smash Brothers again, and it's crazy.
Right.
Although. Now I just want to talk about video games because I've been playing a lot of video games. There was a game called Hyper Light Drifter that came out on Steam. Very fun game. They tried to kickstart an RPG in that world, but I don't think the game had the same kind of... I don't think it was popular enough to transition all of those players into an RPG. Because, like, I found the world confusing, even though it was very beautiful. But I'm like, I don't know what's happening. I wouldn't know how to run a game in Hyper Light Drifter. So, there was another game that I picked up called Naruto Boy. And it is... there's a Japanese programmer, and something happened to him, and it's kind of like Tron. You're the character. You're like the little program that needs to go into the universe to fight off the evil programs to save his memories and hopefully find out what happened. So it's kind of this platformer, but it's also a mystery of what's going on. And I've got this cool techno blade, and everything's like 80s rock and pixels. And I was thinking this would be an awesome MMO, or not an MMO, a tabletop RPG. I was like, that would be so cool. But I was like, oh, it's the same problem with Hyper Light Drifter. Like, I like the visuals, but those visuals aren't going to translate into a really cool story until I know what the story is, you know? And so, yeah, I thought it was interesting. But really, really cool game. I'm enjoying it. Hopefully my Steam Deck email comes soon, and then I can get my Steam Deck. I wanted it to happen before Gen Con for the plane ride, but that is not going to happen.
Yeah, I kept looking at it because I thought I could get one too, but since you don't even have one yet, I was like, I'm gonna wait. Yeah. I'm not gonna try to order it.
It might be a year before I get my thing. Not a year from today, but a year from when I ordered, so we'll see.
Craziness. I did want to mention
go ahead.
Yeah. So the only reason I brought this up is that really our good buddy from Nerd Immersion.
Who?
He's on vacation at the moment, but he did post a video about the D&D movie plot. Got leaked, I believe. Not that I went and looked at it because I want to be surprised and I want to go in with no expectations. So I'm like, I've stayed away from whatever. I just know Chris Pine's in it, and that's about it. I forget anything else at this point. I'm just going to go in fresh. I think it was a couple days ago. But he was also talking about that they were going to show either the movie or a longer part of the movie or a bigger teaser of the movie at Comic-Con, which is on in a couple of weeks also, same week that we're getting Radiant Citadel coming out, 7/21 through 7/24, the end of that week, that weekend. Comic-Con will be happening. So I wonder if we'll get some announcements there. We'll start to see more stuff about the movie.
Yeah.
We might see another drop of a trailer of some sort. Maybe we'll get to see kind of where they're going or what they're doing with that. I'm interested to see, how they tackle it. Are they trying to go humor? Are they trying to go serious? Are they trying to do both? Are they? Is it a story we might recognize? Are they going to put a recognizable villain in it? Is it going to be all just new and not Forgotten Realms based?
It's Forgotten Realms based
on all these things. Oh, it is.
So they did. So there's
I don't even know that.
They reference Neverwinter very specifically. So it's Sword Coast.
So you just spoiled it for me. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm just kidding.
So I did know that. But yeah, there's. I don't think it's a trailer, but they're gonna show some footage that they've been working on. From what I just saw here, it looks like somebody said that there is a displacer beast in one of the scenes. So
that's
the
a good creature.
Six-legged kind of vamping
tentacles
could be really cool. Yeah.
Black Panther.
They're gonna not. It's not fan service, I think, but they're gonna lean heavily on the iconic monsters. Like if we don't see a Beholder, I'm gonna be really like shocked.
Surprised.
Yeah,
for sure.
So.
Well, I'm just curious on how they portray. Like, are they just going to do a story that's a fantasy story, or are they going to somehow impart to us that we have a paladin and a bard? And, are we going to see the classes? Are we going to see some of the mechanics of the world and referenced in the movie so that we really tie into knowing it's our game? Or is it just sometimes when they do a movie that's set in our game, they don't reference any of the actual, it's just somebody running around. You don't know if they're a paladin or you don't know if they're a cleric or...
Well, it's called Honor Among Thieves, so I think we're going to have a lot of rogues.
Some thieves. We're going to have some rogues.
But yeah, we've talked about this before where I really like how the Lego movie handled it, and I like a lot of other things, but I don't know. I feel they're going to take a very safe Marvel route, and it's they want to start a Dungeons and Dragons cinematic universe like that. I think that is their hope, and whether they do that through heroes and we really latch on to Chris Pine being the Iron Man of D&D kind of a thing, or what I want them to do is latch onto the villains, because everybody knows Orcus and everybody knows Vecna. Not everybody, but like fans of those are the things that carry through the stories. Not, like Espen Flamedrake, who I really love. He's my character, but nobody else knows who that is. So I think in order for it to work, you have to lean on those characters that everyone recognizes. But I don't know if they'll like pan the camera out at the end and it turns out that it was just a bunch of kids playing at a table, and then, someone turns straight to the camera and breaks the fourth wall and says, "And you can play too." Like, I don't know if it'll be that cheesy, but
or like Never-Ending Story version where you're seeing two stories at once kind of thing. That the Fred Savage kind of cool moment. I think that is a cool way to do.
Like, I am a 10-year-old boy and I got sucked into the world of Dungeons and Dragons. What am I going to do? Like, I want him to take it seriously. Like, But
that's what the original D&D cartoon was too, remember? So, and that's what everybody...
And that was great. No.
Right. It was great. What are you talking about? Hot takes from Jordan.
I watched a couple episodes.
80s cartoon. Well, you can't rewatch them now. They're not as good. But back then, as you're a kid, you're like, yes, suck me into some fantasy world.
Idiot child. It was wonderful.
You didn't want to be in your neighborhood. You just want to be somewhere else.
So it's funny. And I guess this is a Hasbro move. But, we talk about... Wizards of the Coast doesn't go to Gen Con anymore. They don't do a lot of these events that you feel like you should. They kind of are like, well, you game companies can do that. We're going to go over here. And this is another thing where it's like Comic-Con, like, but you're not a movie production studio. You're not comic books. You're not, but
I think they would like to be.
But
yeah.
They want to be that, a class level thing. And so they're like, yeah, we'll go hang out with Paramount and we'll go hang out with Disney. I mean, Disney's going to be all over there. So
yeah. And there will be a D&D experience site that's not at where it is, but it's supposed to be, I think it was 3 or 4 blocks. I watched somebody walk from where it was to where they're going to be setting it up. So I wonder what that's going to be like too. And so if anybody, just like Ted said in his video, people are going to that. Let us know what it looks like. I'm going to try to keep an eye out for it to see if we can get a tour of it or something cool. Because I think one of the bucket list items I think I have not done is to go to a Comic-Con in San Diego.
Comic-Con? Yeah.
The San Diego Comic-Con. And I feel like I at least want to go once. I think it's like a pretty big deal. I would say bigger really than Gen Con. Gen Con's niche to gamers. That group is not as big as like a Comic-Con movie comics fans. I think it's a bigger group than just gamer
Well,
group.
it's turning into much more of a. It's not about comics anymore,
Yeah.
solely, but it is.
Yeah.
It's turned into a big media thing. So, the wife went. That was also one of her bucket lists, and she went. Well, it was a long time ago, but because we were early in dating, which is why I didn't go, because I was like, I don't have tickets, I don't have that kind of money, and she's like, okay, bye.
See ya.
But yeah, they said a good time. She went to like a True Blood. That was the big thing at
Like
the
all
time.
the panels
was
and
She went to the
stuff,
True Blood
yeah.
panel and saw Suke and all the other people.
Deborah Ann Wall.
Nanjo was there. Deborah Ann Wool was probably there. Yeah. And then a couple book signings and stuff of authors that she liked. She had a blast, but it's also exhausting. Like, and our friend had their new baby with them. Ooh. And they specifically won't let strollers into the event because they just take up too much space. Yeah. And so she had to like lug this baby around for like 3 days. I was like, oh my gosh, that's got to be exhausting. So
yeah. Would your wife go again?
Oh yeah. Like if it was, I mean, she's not chomping
Jordan,
at the bit to go, but
plan a trip. Go to San Diego Comic-Con.
Oh, I got a press badge for PAX in Seattle. Do you want to go to PAX?
Nice. What's the dates?
September.
Maybe.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it too. A couple of people are pressuring me to go, and I'm like, it would be fun to go back to Seattle. Let's talk about Baldur's Gate 3. What's going on?
I just saw, this was just a quick note. This is like, proves your note that Friday night, this was not on our notes, and I just happened to get up this morning and see that the panel had ran. Baldur's Gate 3 is the game that I think in my mind has the single best opening movie for any Dungeons and Dragons property of anything, because it has the Nautiloid ship and a mind flayer running from elves on dragons. Come on, you cannot beat that, and it looks so good. And the game is actually a fun. What do they call these? The CRPGs. They're in the style of original, Baldur's Gate, Original Sin, Divinity.
Oh, I always called them isometric RPGs.
Yeah, and I think there's a CRPG for some reason. I forget what the C stands for, but like it's a more tactical game. It's not, it's not like first-person shooter. It's not MMO. It's more strategic.
Well, CRPG, Googling it says that's computer role-playing game. So I don't know if that's the
word. Yeah, I don't know if that's quite the same thing. But so the big news that they had on their panel, I think this is the 6th time they've done it, their big year-long panel, Patch 8 is out. And now they have added the gnome race, which I think gets them very close to having all of the races from the player's handbook. And they added the bard. So now Jordan can play a bard, which I think
do like
bards.
Pretty
fun and cool. The only thing missing, I think I heard, was paladin and monk, maybe. But everything else is in there now, I think.
Really?
So they've really expanded what's in the game. It sounds like if you tried it months ago or a year ago, 2 years ago, a lot of that stuff has been tightened up. A lot of the dialogues have been
is it playable in the sense that I get a full game? Like, can I finish the story? Is it still that chapter 1?
They cap it. I don't think it's chapter 1, but I think they cap it around 1 or 2. Chat can check me on this, but they haven't let people see the later parts of the game yet. But when I played it, I put in like 4 or 5 hours, and I still hadn't gotten to the end. So it's a lot. And I was trying out the druid, and I was trying out the ranger, and I was trying out a wizard. And I spent a ton of time.
Yeah, they have the main classes, but do they have all of the subclasses? Like,
they usually have a couple of the subclasses.
So you're not like... All. Yeah, I can't be a necromancer wizard, but I might have the evocation or something or whatever. So
yeah, it's a lot of players' handbook stuff. I don't remember seeing any like Tasha's or any of that stuff. It's really focused on 5e rule set, players' handbook available stuff. I think they will get there, and I think they have a route to that's going to be their DLC stuff, or that's going to be the stuff they add in. To get all these different things, but I think currently it's just getting most of the player's handbook stuff in. But I mean, even that is a pretty big feat, because just imagine all the spells you gotta put in there, all the mechanics you're having to work around that. There's lots of monsters you're putting in there to actually make the story. So it has been pretty fun.
I agree. It's just funny that, I mean, I'm looking at my shelf where I see Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus, and I think that was a tie-in. Like, they changed that to the title Baldur's Gate to tie in with the game. And the game's still not done, and I'm just like, well, I would love to play it once it's done, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and the thing they said that I saw that's been kind of being said about the people that are kind of watching this, it feels like this patch was the one where a lot of really high-end polishing is happening, and they feel like the next few are get it to the goal line stuff. Like, not so much keep adding in new content or figuring out how to add new mechanics. Because even adding a bard to a computer game, imagine the mechanics of the bard class are very different than the mechanics of a lot of the other classes. So now that they have that piece in, that would have taken new engineering that they didn't have for the other stuff. Whereas I think now, from what people are saying, the patches are about cleaning it up, getting rid of the bugs, making sure the story pieces are ready, and then get it for the Steam release and the actual full release. So maybe.
Well, I hope it's better than Sword Coast Legends, because I was very disappointed with that game, and I was very excited for it.
Yeah, it plays really good, and the one that I love a lot is the Pathfinder one, Wrath of Righteousness.
Yeah,
and that one is really good. So I'm hoping Baldur's Gate 3 is just as good as that, and there'll be 2 of those big games like that out there that are fun.
Cool.
So,
remember, I don't think it was last Halloween. Maybe it was a couple of Halloweens ago.
Halloween.
We got all those Spirit stores, and Wizards teamed up with Spirit Halloween, and they came out with like the Dritz swords and the bow. Do you remember all that stuff? Like, I bought the Dritz swords. They're on my wall. They're doing this again, and it just kind of cracks. I don't know why it cracks me up that they're doing this, but they are releasing these like plastic kind of, they almost look like foam rubber masks. So this Halloween, you'll be able to buy a Dungeons & Dragons Beholder mask, a Mind Flayer mask, and
that would be a good
the
one.
villain is Venger from the old 80s cartoon with the one
horn. Yeah, with the one horn. Yeah.
So they're making those 3 monsters. Spendy. I don't know. So the Beholder's mask is $130, and the Mind Flayer mask is $100, and Venger is $90.
But they're high quality then?
Apparently, I don't know. We'll see. I'm wondering. They look nice. So I have no idea how they'll fit on your head or what they feel like or whatever. But the Mind Flayer one specifically could be that's a really cool one to just kind of. I want to dress up like a Mind Flayer. That'd be kind of fun. But for $100, do I want to dress up like a Mind Flayer? I don't know. We'll see. But what's funny is like the Venger mask says shipping will begin in August 31st of 2022, and I'm like, okay. That makes sense. And then the Beholder mask says shipping to begin November 30th, 2022. And I'm like, those Halloween Beholder masks coming out around Christmas. That's exactly what we don't want. So I don't know if that's supply chain shortage again, or I don't know. But I was like, man, if that's not in stores. But yeah, so Trick or Treat Studios, I think that is Spirit Halloween. I could be wrong, but they have all kinds of partnerships that they've done to license things to make whatever for Halloween. So, and I thought that was
maybe you don't buy it as
a
mask. Maybe you just hang it from your ceiling, and it's a cool beholder.
Well, you could do that too. They have those beholder like mounted things that you can buy too from WizKids. So
nice.
Yeah,
very nice.
Anyway, I'll put a link in chat if you're interested. There's also links in the description. It's just the 3 things and some wrapping paper, but yeah. So
3 things in wrapping paper.
Yeah. Did you finally watch Stranger Things? Do we need to just skip over this because it'll be the entire show?
So this is where we come to the announcement that the Saturday Morning D&D show is ending, and it is now going to be the Saturday Morning Stranger Things show from here on out. So that's all we're going to talk about ever is more Stranger Things. Yes, I watched it, binged
we'll get like 9
over
episodes in and be like, I don't know what else to talk about until season 5 comes out.
No, there's so much to talk about. There's so much to dive into. No, have you finished it?
Yeah.
Oh my god. Just so good. I don't want to spoil it for people, but for me, probably best season so far. What about you?
Season 1 was still my favorite. And I think this is a close second. Season 3 got weird, but I enjoyed it, and I don't remember liking season 2. So
season 2, I think, was just more of season 1, so it doesn't really kind of stand out on its own, because I feel like it was like a wrap up or a cleanup of season 1. But by then it was seasons were going to be its own thing. So by 3 it was kind of its thing. 4 is it's a thing, and now season 5, what we think of as the final season. I don't know if they've said they'll do a 6th season. Looks to be, the setup of the last shot of the last, episode looked epic. But wow, what a roller coaster ride. What a, all of the actors were spot on and amazing. All of the little sets they were on and the venues that they went to and how they split up the different groups again and who went with who and where and how things happened. It was just, what a crazy good story to have watched. I can't wait to just start it all over again and watch it all again because it was so good.
Yeah, there was, and I don't want to do spoilers, so I guess I won't talk about this, but I will say that there was one big question that, from my perspective, they were hinting at, we're going to answer this question, and then they didn't. They very specifically went on a tangent to not answer that question, and I got really angry about it. And then the show ended, and I was like, what? Yeah. And so I remember the final episode, I was very upset. I was like upstairs, like, I stayed up late for this. They didn't even answer the question. So we'll see about season 5, but boy, I mean, Vecna is trending, the word Vecna is trending higher than Dungeons & Dragons because of this show. And more people are getting, filtered back into things. When season 4 started, and a little bit before, I made a video on Vecna like a year and a half ago, and it was like, oh, everyone's like searching Vecna, and that video has been my #1 video now for like the last 2 months because of this show. And I'm just like, okay, I guess people are interested in Vecna, and that's just the algorithm, and they're searching it and they're finding things. But it's fun how many comments I'm seeing on that video where they're like, I'm here from Stranger Things, like I'm learning about D&D. And I think we even talked about this where my friend called me and said, my husband's watching Stranger Things, he wants to play D&D now, like, you play D&D, right? I'm like, I do. Right? We should do a game. So again, we always say like it's getting more people into the hobby, and that's awesome. But
well, and I think we've had debates, or we've seen debates on, did it really have an impact, or was it really Critical Role was the big impact, or was it these other, was it Community running their like little couple episodes of a Dungeons and Dragons or references, or Big Bang Theory mentioning, where was popularity coming from there, or was it Wizards generating popularity, or was it streaming generating popularity? And I just feel like, man, you cannot deny the power of Stranger Things putting the words Dungeons and Dragons or Vecna, or like, we didn't get Demogorgon as much, but we certainly have Mind Flayer. It seems to be just as prominent. My wife knows that word now versus she never would have known that word at all. But Mind Flayer, Vecna, Dungeons and Dragons.
No, Bob World Builder on YouTube. I want to say friend of mine. We've chatted, but we don't like. We kind of just we communicate through comments because we watch each other's videos. But he's a very nice guy. He did a great video where he answered your exact question, where you were saying like, well, was it streaming? Was it this? Or was it the rise of like playing tabletop RPGs over the internet? Was it Twitch, And it probably was like a perfect storm, but his very clear like argument is that no, it was Stranger Things. Like it was the fact that show was so popular, and then all of a sudden people were like, oh, Dungeons and Dragons. I've never thought to play it because like my mom said it was the devil, and now we don't care that, or people aren't as scared of the devil as they were back in the 80s and 70s. And so it's like, okay. Because I remember the 90s where it's like, burn your Pokemon cards. They're going to lead you down to hell. And you're like, it's Pokemon. Like, it's brightly colored Japanese cartoons. Come on, guys. So same thing, But I think that's a huge part of it. And then, there's this 5th edition D&D out, and you just go pick it up, and you see that there's a Demogorgon. You see this, So, yeah.
So I loved it. I loved all the characters in it. I loved the introduction of some of the new characters. Obviously, Eddie Munson is the big, big
so
new
cool.
name that everybody,
That actor's British too. Like I saw an interview with him, and I'm like, you do not sound like Eddie, but he's really cool. He's great, great actor, and super fun.
That one of the funniest tweets I saw was Matt Colville had said, "Hey, I didn't give them the rights to my sophomore year of high school. What's going on here?" And I was just like, that's exactly. There's a certain group of people that I identify with that I was the exact same age they are at that time. That's how high school seemed like to me. That's how things were. You saw those people and those groups and those clothes and those interactions. That was, it was just so spot on to see something like that. And it amazing, but then to throw in something supernatural or to throw in something fantastical or just super cool into it, it was just like, it's everything you want. It's why the movies like Goonies are so good too, because it's like, I was a kid at the age of the cast of Goonies, so when I watched that show, I loved that show. And I think there's lots of people that, if you were at that age and identify with the movie that is showing characters of your age, it just sticks with you, it just stays with you. And so I'm so happy they're still doing it. I can't wait to see what happens now, because at this point, without spoilers, we went Demogorgon, which actually they kind of named a creature that isn't as what we would say is powerful as a Demogorgon in Dungeons and Dragons, right? So we kind of gave a big name to a small creature, but
they were fighting it in the game, and so that's why it kind of became that name. So.
Yeah, and then they have to fight a mind flayer if you
which
go
is
through
something
some of the
that
other
controls
seasons.
your brain, and that's why they named it.
So that works out, and then we get a Vecna because we get this wizard-like person who's doing things that they associate with a wizard, and they were just finished their adventure fighting Vecna, so it made sense. But where do we go after that? We went Demogorgon, Mind Flayer, and that's the thing. We always mention 3, but there's been 4 seasons. You ever notice there's always 3 things?
Oh yeah, and I think that's why season 2 was dumb, because it was like
it didn't have its own.
It was like
it was still Demogorgon.
Flayer. It was like I don't know. Yeah,
yeah, it was still Demogorgon.
I don't remember.
Starting to set up Mind Flayer. And then, So, but where could we go now? What iconic thing are they going to pull? Absolutely from Dungeons and Dragons. Basically, that would have been. They're playing 3rd edition at that point. No, they're playing. Oh, they're playing advanced Dungeons and Dragons.
I don't think they're playing advanced D&D.
I don't think they're playing basic.
Yeah, I think
they got to be playing advanced because one of them's a paladin. I think and you don't get that until.
That's true.
I don't think you get that until advanced. I could be wrong. But
anyway,
it's in that
specifically,
era. Red box.
Specifically,
it's Red box.
one of the little girl that joins them at the game. Yeah. She says that she's got this level rogue, and
14th level.
Someone on the internet was saying like, well, if the show takes place in 1980 whatever, then they didn't have rogues, they had thieves, because that wasn't until AD&D that they got, So maybe it's AD&D, but maybe it's not AD&D 2nd edition. I'm not sure. I'd have to go look at the dates, but
it's not 3rd by that point.
No.
So we'll keep it to AD&D, and anything before is fair game.
3rd edition was like late 90s.
What
2000s.
creature can we pull out? What thing above Vecna?
Can
we, could just enter
Tiamat, Orcus.
That's where I was thinking we were going. Some big dragon type thing. Tiamat would be a big kind of all of a sudden enters everybody's, vocabulary. Because other than that, you're just going to demons or gods or angels or things that are that powerful. But I couldn't think of anything else. Beholders. I was trying to think of anything that was
First edition till 88,
super big.
Yeah. 3rd edition was 2000. Yeah, it's not 3rd edition.
Nope. So interesting. I can't wait to rewatch it again. Many of the pieces, apparently the song that's going around from this one is the Kate Bush song that seems to be popping up everywhere. I've seen videos all over of that.
Which I wonder, they were saying well, is the Metallica song going to take off as much? And I was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I've rewatched that scene a couple times.
I think it's because people know Metallica and nobody knew this Kate Bush song. But she's made a lot of money. Oh, Lolth. That's a good one. Thank you, Mr. Bidwell. Could be Lolth.
That could be a good one.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that one. But again, that's a goddess, right? That's
Yeah, but she's then evil
then you're
drow
getting into
goddess.
pantheon.
She had originally it was like the demon web pits, and she was the monster Lolth at the bottom of the demon web pits, and so I could totally see them going that route. Like
that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Oh, and there were spiders.
Sure.
Prominent in 4th in season 4. They kind of were. That was a big theme with one of our bad guys there. I won't spoil too much, but it was a theme. Running.
Too much spoilers.
So maybe we're guessing it. Okay, we'll come back next Saturday when we talk about the Stranger Things show.
Real quick, WizKids announced 2 really cool, bigger minis. One of them I didn't know about, but these are magic items in D&D. Classic magic items, apparently. And one of them is the apparatus of Kowalish, which is the large crab-looking tank that you pull different levers and it does different things. But you'll be able to put your minis in it. Like, it's this huge looking thing. It looks really cool. And the other one is, I've never heard of this one, but apparently it's a classic, like the apparatus of Kowalish. This is the mighty servant of Liuko, and it looks like a big Gundam looking mech thing. Nice. And I want it more than I've wanted a lot of things in my life.
Because you want Gundam.
And you can take off the top and put your mini on the inside. Oh, it's so cool. So they're going to come out Q3 of 2022, which starts in November, I think, is Q3. So
I was just at last week when I went to the game store. They have a whole wall now of the painted Wizards of the Coast official miniatures. That thing is taller than I am now. Some of the boxes of the dragons are this big.
Oh, yeah.
They've got them stacked up. I have had no idea how big the miniature thing got until you see them, all the possibilities that you can get right now stacked in one spot. It is floor to ceiling miniatures after miniature. And these are the painted, pretty good quality. Some are really giants that are giants and dragons that are dragons. And
well, they have AI that are generating them now.
Yeah. So you can get the yawning portal.
Yeah.
They had the big yawning portal box. You could pick that up if you wanted. It was like crazy what they're putting out.
We were looking. DM Nathan and I were at free RPG Day, and we saw the yawning portal, and I was like, "That's really cool." And he made a very good point where he was like, "But I feel like you could buy this generic terrain for less." Be able to build that almost exactly, and then at the end of the day, you could still tear it down and use it for something else. Whereas that's like a very static piece of something. Yeah. And so I'm like, it's cool, but you're right. I don't think I would ever want it.
And the prices on these things are, wow.
There was like a $300 Tiamat that was hanging out there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's there.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, these are crazy. I'll take a picture next time I'm in there. If I go this weekend.
Yeah, there you go.
I'll grab a picture and throw it up on Twitter so people can just see all in one spot. And they're not the only ones doing it. I saw some Pathfinder ones were out there. I saw like third-party ones had like, I think they were called Warlock tiles or
WizKids,
something like that. And then, but there was also some other companies that weren't them that had their displays up too. So there's definitely other people doing it too. You still can do the unpainteds. There was a spot for the unpainteds. That wasn't as big, but these were like the colored plastic or already painted or already done up. So you just pick it up and off you go. So if you're huge into miniature games, I mean, it sounds like you can get, spending lots of money, you can get just about anything you could possibly want.
Boy, and they're pretty, don't get me wrong. So I don't know, we'll see.
Very cool.
Let's talk about the game we played. So we played
the only game I played.
Yeah, we played Invisible Sun. If you guys follow the show, you probably know that we did this a while ago where we played. It was supposed to be a one shot that turned into 2 nights because we're learning the system, and chuckleheads like to chuckle, and so we don't really get anywhere. But Indoor Adventure was really pushing us to finish it because he really liked the Invisible Sun system, and I said, okay. So 3 months,
has the bug.
3 months later, we get back together to finish Invisible Sun, the one thing.
No LB, though. Shame on you.
Yeah, LB couldn't make it, so it was just Lex and Lucian and Indoor Adventure and myself. But we had a lot of fun. And the cool thing about Invisible Sun is when somebody can't make it, you just say, oh, they faded back into shadow. And like, there's a whole, not mechanic, but there's an explanation for it that I kind of like. And I don't think it went how I wanted it to go, but I also hadn't played in so long that we spent a lot of time trying to remember how to play. But I don't know. Overall, would you play it again? Did you have fun? What are your thoughts on Invisible Sun?
Yeah, I like and am interested in the world and what we've got to experience. I definitely feel like we have a lot to learn. We did not master that game, and we are really good at understanding role-playing games. I feel like we can read through books and understand mechanics really well, and we could pick up any other game much quicker. I still felt like this one, I felt like, wow, we had a lot of ways to go to figure this one out, because it's just, and you pointed out, it's the one downside that I will now readily admit, the editing of where material is to find it hampers you from learning this game quickly. It doesn't mean you can't learn it. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It just makes it hard to do it on the spot or on the fly.
It really expects you to like read through the whole book, retain what you read, but I read through the whole book and I want to like, oh, how did that rule go? But then you can't find it, and the index is hard. I feel like if I were to take this seriously and do it again, I think I would spend time and either write up my own little thing of rules so I have a quick reference to page numbers or something, or like Photoshop or photocopy a couple of pages so I have like the key information. But,
or like you would build the charts on your DM screen so you had the quick references like you would back in the day, right? Because you always couldn't find the thing you needed either back in the day. So but take that piece away, take that criticism away. It's such an interesting world that you do want to go back and kind of find out what's going on. The mechanics are enough that you feel like if you do learn them, it's going to be a really fun, crazy kind of game. And it's really exploring some far out ideas and ways of thinking. And that makes it very Monty Cook in my mind. Very, he brings the weird into the fantasy, which I always like, and there's something about that whole world that I definitely like to get into. And his idea of the magics are so different. It's like you have a Vancian magic that you could kind of play, but then he just threw out there some other magics that are just blow your mind as far as this is how this class plays, or this is what this class's magic is like, or whatever, being a Visla. And it was just like that. I could see diving into the Weaver, or diving into the apostate more, and just figuring out their mechanics even better. So I think it'd be a very interesting thing. I think you need to have a solid adventure in mind. You have to really know the world, I think, so that because your players are going to have lots of questions, probably more than if you just throw them into a fantasy world and you're like, okay, you guys are in a dark forest. They don't have a lot of questions about dark forests.
Right, like what color is the grass? It's green. You're good. But this one is like, what?
You go to this one. You're telling me about a house and it looks kind of like an owl, but it's not, and it has big eyes, and it's got, it's like there's lots of stuff going on that you're like,
it's a Salvador Dali painting as a campaign setting. So I was thinking about this a lot, and I was thinking back to when I was learning AD&D and 5th edition, which was at the same time. So how I started with D&D is I got invited to an AD&D game, and we played that for like a month, and then it fell apart. And then I'm like, well, I'm going to go buy 4th edition stuff because 4th edition's the latest. And then we played 4th edition until 5th edition came out, and here we are today. But I spent a good chunk of time reading those books and learning them, and then made lots of problems at the table. And I don't think that this was any different. I think in my mind, just like you said, like I'm familiar with RPGs. I should be faster at this. I'm frustrated that I'm not. But I was thinking about it the other day where I'm like, if I took my time and just treated it like this is the game I'm going to play for the next year, we're going to meet up, we're going to learn it together, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, that it would not feel so daunting. And I would get it, and I would start to understand what's happening, and we would roll, because we jumped right into an adventure, but the first session is like building your house with your players and building a territory where you live and things like that. Like a lot of that is to answer those questions of like, what is a Visli? How did I get here? And things like that. And to really kind of solidify your characters. I went with a friend to go see Thor: Love and Thunder on Thursday. Ooh. And he is new to RPGs. We actually started playing RPGs because his wife really likes RPGs, and she comes to my DCC nights. And then he came to a DCC night and was like, this is amazing. I've never played an RPG. So now he really likes them. But they have another Dungeon Master friend, and they were playing 13th Age. And he was saying, have you ever played 13th Age? And I was like, no, I haven't. I was like, I have it a book because I was recommended to me, but I haven't really like read through it. And he said that was the best like RPG experience he's ever had, because there were some like secrets and some other stuff. And then the way, and I don't know if this is in that game or it's the way the Dungeon Master did it, but he was saying that each character in their 13 sessions had a session that was devoted like just to that character. And he's like, sometimes they were funny, sometimes they were like silly, sometimes they like made you bawl. You're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this happened to you. And you had such an investment with that character, compared to something like DCC, where it's like, oh, you died, roll up something else, you know.
Here's another one.
And I was thinking, I was like, I think Invisible Sun is like that, where you get very invested in this character, because even if your character dies, it's not the end. You know, you can travel to the Pale, which is where all dead things go, and bring your friend back and things like that. So but there's that learning curve. And so I think you just need to have those friends that are like, no, I'm willing to do this. We're not going to do a one shot. Like, that might be fun, or it might be enough to get you excited about it. But now we need to like take the time to figure it out. So,
yeah. And I think the one thing that makes it just slightly different is that you have to learn this world.
Yeah.
That's really crazy, but you also have to learn the mechanics.
Because the world is
so you're learning two
system.
different things. Because like we could learn mechanics, but then like you would change the color of the sun, and all of a sudden that would change what's going on, and then like there's this whole line of suns. And I think eventually a good player who understands this world and understands all that, that's an amazing thing that's happening when that's transitioning and you're going to these different places, and maybe you're going to these different neighborhoods, and you're experiencing these different stories. But there's so much to try to figure out what that is, or what they call a magic item, you know, an ephemeral
object.
How would you use it?
And you're like, you don't just call it a magic item. He's got these funny names for everything. That
everything has its own name. Everything is different,
Whereas,
you know, in some way.
5th edition, they called it advantage, and you're like, well, what's that? Well, you roll 2 dice and you take the higher. I instantly remember the word. I instantly know what it does for the rest of my time.
Yeah,
but when I say like, okay, add those up, that's your venture. You're going to take your venture and subtract it from your fort, and like, what? And so because he gave it all funny names to try to make it more of its own world, you know? So
there's definitely a world you're learning that is a very interesting but very different world than I think anybody would ever have played in so far, for most people.
Yeah.
And a different mechanic system. So you're learning two things at once. So that's the only thing that I think makes it a little tougher than some of the other stuff that you pick up. But I agree. It is that same feeling of, if you devoted yourself, I think you would get it, and you would be able to tell some really fun and cool stories.
And I don't think it would be as intimidating as we're making it sound. I think it's just, originally, like when I learned D&D, which I'll admit that could be a complex thing, because there's the base rules, but then every class twists it to a different way, you know? Like, it's not... Yeah. It's not. I would argue that, you know, playing like old school essentials, or maybe not DCC, but like, you know, there's easier games to try and figure out.
Right. With an audience that hasn't been exposed to it, right? So like if you were playing with your parents and you were trying to, you know, your dad was saying, okay, I've read this book and there's this beholder thing, and I have to describe that to somebody who has no experience with it, and I have to describe the mechanics of your class to your mom and your uncle, and, you know, like people who just their hobbies and things didn't have fantasy books that they were reading or fantasy shows that they were watching, or anything to give them a reference. That means the Dungeon Master has to set that reference for everything.
Yeah.
And if they didn't know it very well, then, you know, So I think that's where we were. We don't know Monty Cook's world very well. But could you imagine playing that if Monty Cook was running it?
Oh my God. That'd be amazing.
Oh my God.
Well, and good. even us who have played Numenera had a leg up, I think, than Lex, who was like, I don't know anything. And we were even talking like, well, Monty Cook, he like was one of the primary designers of Planescape. And then everyone at the table was like, oh,
now
so
it
it's
makes
like,
sense.
It's really weird, like Planescape. Oh,
that weird. Gotcha.
And I was like, yeah. And so when you start doing that, you're like, okay, I understand what it means when I say like Monty Cook. So
yeah.
But it was fun. If you're interested, guys, we have I haven't finished editing this episode, but I did record the audio, and I'm going to put it on Patreon. So you can listen to the first half of the one shot, our thoughts about it, and then the second half of the one shot I'll upload eventually. But it was fun. It was interesting. So
my favorite statement you just said was, that adventure didn't really go the way I thought it was. And I'm thinking, you've got indoor adventure, you've got Lex, and you've got me. How could any adventure go the way you think it's going to go?
Yeah, well, yeah. And I think it was like, I think I left and I'm just like, I hope they had fun. And then I was like, well, they did, because we had fun. But
yeah.
But overall, it was just kind of this. It felt like a very anticlimactic ending. And I think you wanted to fight something, and we never actually fought anything. And so I was like,
everybody was very anti-fight.
Yeah, they all wanted to really negashiate with this.
Yeah, so we didn't even really fight it. Yeah, we didn't get into combat mechanics, so we don't know what those look like.
It was funny. Hashtag draw Patreon game. Yep, we're gonna get on it. That's our show, ladies and gentlemen. Unless Lucian had anything else you wanted to say.
Nope. I'm gonna go out to dinner with my lady here, or lunch, brunch,
very nice.
Something like that.
I'm gonna trim a hedge with my hedge trimmer.
Wow.
I know.
Very cool.
Hashtag dad things. I don't know. Anyway, this was fun. We'll be back next week, maybe with some more teasers and stuff. We'll see if Radiant Citadel gets any more information before we leave. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next week, if not before. Take care.
Bye.